Hello and welcome to Spellbook by the Letters, your weekly look at the D&D 5th edition Player's Handbook Spellbook. Each week we will be choosing 7 spells in the Player's Handbook going alphabetically, and we will be evaluating them on numerous criteria. We will be looking at what spells you should be picking up and casting, and we will be evaluating the types of campaigns and situations in which those spells will be useful. Not all spells are created equal, but all spells do have their place in the game. We're not going to waste a bunch of time on intro, we're going to get cracking and get right in. Picking up where we left off last time, our next spell is the final arcane spell, in the sense of starts with the word arcane. That spell is Arcane Lock. It is a spell only for wizards, and it is a 2nd level abjuration. It has a casting time of 1 action, a range of touch, vocal, somatic, and material components. The material components are gold dust, 25 gold, which the spell consumes. That's important to note that this spell does have a cost, a monetary cost that keeps you from casting it all the time, so that's something to keep in mind. And it does last until it is dispelled. You essentially choose any closed door, window, gate, etc. You touch it as an action and it becomes magically locked. The DC to pick the lock and to break it is increased by 10 until it is dispelled. If you cast knock on it, then it will suppress the effect for 10 minutes, so knock doesn't even stop it. First, this is a fantastic GM spell. Using it in dungeons or places that are going to be more difficult to get into, an Arcane Lock makes them think, okay, can we pick this? Can we break it down? And if we can, do we need to maybe dispel the Arcane Lock first to get through the normal lock on the door? So it's kind of a 2-layer protection. For a player, buffing up their strongholds if they have one, whatever their home base of operations is, having that kind of utility is something that's pretty decent. Making your home fortifications more secure is always good. And as a wizard, popping in this in your spell book for 100 gold, 50 gold if you're an abjuration wizard, that's not too bad. Just keep in mind that material component. So if you are strapped for cash in your campaign, this spell is going to have less use. The other use that I can think of is it does have a casting time of 1 action. So if you are doing something where you know you're going to need to make a quick getaway, have this prepared, or if you have extra preparations, have this prepared for 25 gold worth of gold dust. You can lock a door behind you and just get out of there. It's a little bit expensive, but slowing down people on your way out is incredibly useful, and it does make it more difficult not only to pick, which they have to have somebody proficient in Thieves' Tools, and they have to beat even a DC 10 that's going to slow them down. Odds are they won't have that. They're going to have to break it down. Say a door is a DC 10 or a DC 15. Now you're looking at a DC 20, or for a sturdier door, a DC 25. Most characters cannot make that even on a natural 20, making it a really, really great escape cover. Our second spell is Armor of Agathis. It is a warlock spell, and it reads as thus. It is a 1st level abjuration with a casting time of 1 action. You can only cast it on yourself. Vocal, somatic, and material components. The material components being a cup of water. You'll see why in a little bit. And it has a duration of 1 hour. You create a barrier of frost around yourself, protecting yourself and your gear, and it gives you 5 temporary hit points. And whenever you're attacked in melee, whenever you're hit with a melee attack, while you have these temporary hit points, you deal 5 cold damage to the attacker. So, also, it can be upcast. For the upcast, it increases both the temporary hit points and the damage by 5. So a 2nd level spell gives you 10 temporary hit points, and each time that you're hit in melee while you have these temporary hit points, the attacker takes 10 damage. Third level spell, 15, and 15 damage, and so on. I actually strongly like this spell for the Warlock. It has such a fantastic upcast modifier. Going up to your 5th level spells, when you have 5th level spells as a Warlock, 25 temporary hit points, which is nothing to sneeze at, and dealing 25 damage, even if it's only 2 gotten off, or even 1, 25 damage for a 5th level spell, no save, is decent. 50 damage for a 5th level spell, no save, is actually really strong. So the upcasting being on the Warlocks, there's some spells as a Warlock that just don't feel good as you progress because they don't upcast well. This is not one of those spells, and that's why I really, really like this spell. At 1st and 2nd level, it's okay, but it just keeps progression with your casting. And so for that reason, I really do like this spell. The one thing that should be said about this spell is there is an inherent risk to it. You can't just go slapping on yourself willy-nilly. If you are fighting lots of ranged enemies, and you can predict that, this spell is bad because ranged attacks don't deplete the temporary hit points without dealing the damage of the spell. And without the damage, the temporary hit points come at a pretty mediocre rate. Like, it's false life rate. And as you're going to see, I don't like that spell. So I definitely wouldn't like getting that rate for this. But if you can predict well with this spell is incredibly good. The next spell we're going to talk about is another Warlock spell. Arms of Hadar. It's a 1st level Warlock spell with a range of self, and it goes out to a 10-foot radius around you, vocal and somatic components, and a duration of instantaneous. You essentially conjure dark tentacles around you in a 10-foot radius. They hit all creatures for 2d6 points of necrotic damage, and each creature must make a strength saving throw. On a successful save, they have the damage and take no additional effects, but if they fail the save, they can't take reactions this round. Not a great fan of this spell. For the damage to small enemies around you, I would rather have Armor of Agathis to negate the damage and possibly kill the enemies that are surrounding me. The damage is about on par with Armor of Agathis, except to one creature, I guess. So you can hit more creatures in this. This damage is a little bit better, I guess, and it scales the more creatures that are around you. It also allows you, after you hit all of them, you can get out, and they can't take attacks of opportunity because they can't take reactions. It's okay for a Blade Lock. It's nothing special. You have to think, what am I giving up casting this? And giving up casting Armor of Agathis and Hex. Those are generally going to be your 2 Warlock slots at lower levels for a Blade Lock. I'm not a huge fan. But it's not bad. If you're looking for an AoE option that hits around you, it's cool. It has some utility, but it's not one of my go-to. It at least does scale as well, with upcasting dealing an extra d6 per level. We're chugging right along through the spellbook here, and we're moving on to our 4th spell today, which is Astral Projection. Astral Projection is a Cleric Warlock Wizard spell, and it reads as thus. It is a 9th level necromancy spell. It has a casting time of 1 hour and a range of 10 feet. It requires vocal, somatic, and material components. The material components are a jacinth of 1,000 gold for yourself and an ornately carved bar of silver worth at least 100 gold, all of which the spell consumes. And for each target, you have to have an additional bar. So if you want to take a party of 4 on this magical journey, this is costing you 4,400 gold for 1 casting. It better be really good to be able to do that. What does it do? You get to be transported to the astral plane. You leave your body behind in a state of suspended animation. You cannot age, and you don't need food and air. You can be harmed, though. Your body can be killed while you're leaving it. It just won't die of natural causes. And you go to the astral plane. You can travel along on the astral plane for as long as you want to. Dispel magic will send you back to your body. If you take enough damage in the astral plane, instead of dying, you're simply sent back to your body. And yeah, we're gonna skip over all of the descriptions of what it's like to travel in the astral plane, because we don't need to read through all of that. I do not like this spell, though. It's one of those spells that you use only if your GM is wanting to run an astral adventure, and then you do it. If you need to go through the astral plane for some reason, this is the spell that exists to get you there. I would sure as hell not take this as my 9th level warlock spell. As a wizard, you're going to seek it out. You're going to spend 450 gold to put it in your spellbook, and then you're going to spend another 4,400, so about 5,000 gold to cast the spell to get your party into the astral plane. What is the astral plane? A brief overview is the astral plane is one of 2 transitive planes. The astral plane is so unless you are plane shifting directly to a plane, you go from the material plane to the astral plane. And then from the astral plane, you can find portals to all of the different planes. But the astral plane is really, really ethereal and not mapped. And space in 3 dimensions doesn't quite work the same way. You can fight in 3 dimensions and everything, but your travel there, you just kind of search around until you find a portal, and you hope it's the right portal to go to the plane you want. And it might be to the right plane, and you can figure that out, but who knows where on that plane you're going. So it's fine for searching, I guess, but it's just not. It's a really cool effect, but it's incredibly expensive. It has no great mechanical benefit. It is a powerful effect that only the highest caliber of spellcasters can do, and it's something that they can keep in mind, but it's not your day-to-day go-to. And I wouldn't do it unless you have a damn good reason. Why not just cast Plane Shift unless your GM is making it impossible to get the tuning forks? Our next spell is a cleric spell. It is Augury. It is a 2nd level cleric spell, an abjuration spell with the ritual tag. It has a casting time of 1 minute, a range of self, and a duration of instantaneous. It also requires vocal, somatic, and material components. The material components, they are divination sticks that are ornately carved, or some sort of tokens that are worth 25 gold. So it is a minor expenditure to be able to cast this spell. When you cast this spell, you describe a course of action, and you will receive results based on if that course of action is going to be fine. You get wheel for good results, woe for bad results, wheel and woe for something that can be good and bad, or that will have a little bit of good and a little bit of bad, or you get nothing if the results are neither really good or bad. Also, if you try to cast the spell before taking a short rest again, you have a cumulative 25% chance of a random reading instead of an accurate reading. So don't cast this more than once. Once you get into that territory, you cannot trust the results at all. And you don't want to be dealing with that. You don't want to be wasting time dealing with that. That's really just there to prevent, because it is a ritual spell, just casting it over and over and over and over and over. This spell is fine. There's a very minor opportunity costs to the spell itself. It takes up 1 prep slot, which are precious. I'm not saying there's infinite prep slots, but it takes up 1 prep slot to be able to cast this. The use for it is very minor, though. You are looking at something that's going to have pretty much immediate bad or good results. Things like this might be opening a chest in a dungeon, or opening a door, or something that you're not sure about, touching an object that you have a suspicion might be cursed. Things like that. Augury is going to be your way to be like, okay, is this going to be fine? You also need to make sure that you're not dealing with an asshole GM who is just going to mislead you with Augury. If you are, you might have bigger issues, and then I definitely wouldn't take this spell, though. Our next spell is a paladin spell. We're hitting 2 paladin spells at the end here. 3 of the aura spells. This first paladin spell we're going to talk about is Aura of Life. It is a 4th level abjuration with a casting time of 1 action and a range of self. It goes 30 feet around you, though. And it has a duration of concentration, 10 minutes, and it only has vocal components. What it does is when you cast Aura of Life, you get a 30-foot radius aura around you, which is pretty sizable. And in that aura, each non-hostile creature, including you, has resistance to necrotic damage, cannot have maximum hit point totals reduced, and whenever a non-hostile creature starts at 0 hit points in the aura, they go up to 1 on their turn. So it negates their need to make death saves on their turn if they're down to 0, and brings them up into the fight. I like this spell a lot. I like it quite a bit. It's incredibly powerful, and it comes in at a level where you are going to be needing to deal with these things. It is a situational spell. If you are not fighting powerful undead, it's not as great. It does nothing, pretty much, except for the bringing up at 0, which is not worth a 4th level spell slot and concentration. But if you are fighting powerful undead, it is amazing. Resistance to necrotic damage, keep your party up longer. Not letting your maximum hit point total be reduced, incredibly invaluable, and very few effects in the game do this. So that's why it stands out. Think about this. If your maximum hit point total is reduced, sometimes you can rest it off, sometimes you can't. It depends on the effect. But to get your hit points back up, for 1 instance of the damage, you have to spend 1,000 gold on a lesser restoration. And a 5th level spell. This is a 4th level preventative spell that will keep you and your allies safe from that. Now you have to predict it, you have to prevent it, but an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And this here shows that better than anything. The next and final spell of this episode is Aura of Purity. It is a 4th level abjuration spell on the paladin spell list again. It has the same radius, the same components, the same concentration and duration, but it has a different effect. This aura lets each non-hostile creature, including yourself, get resistance to poison damage, immunity to all disease, and advantage on saving throws versus the following conditions: blinded, charmed, deafened, frightened, paralyzed, poisoned, and stunned. That is a huge swath of debilitating conditions, and giving advantage to all of your allies on that is really, really good. This is another one of those ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure spells. It's not quite as situationally powerful as Aura of Life is, but it's more universally applicable, and its effect is still very powerful. I really like this spell. If you're not using Aura of Life, be using Aura of Purity as a paladin. This fits right into your role as a frontline protector. This costs a 4th level spell, so it is expensive, but it is fantastic. And it's going to save you a lot of hurt and a lot of pain. This is one of those spells that keeps your party going and going strong, rather than being hit by charms and frightens and being paralyzed, being stunned. Things that drop your party members out of the fight, this just says no. It's a really, really good spell, and it should not be overlooked at all. I really like this spell. So, Aura of Life when fighting powerful undead. When you're not, Aura of Purity prepared. And because the Paladin is a prepared caster, you just prepare the one that you're going to need for the day. So, Aces. Aces spell. We're reaching the end of the episode, but I realized that we didn't do one fun thing, and that's talking about the components for each spell. So we're going to do that now. We listed them, but we didn't go over them. Arcane Lock. I think somatic components obviously are just a little or somatic components are just a little like you're making a key motion, whereas the vocal components are ward, protect this gateway. Let only those I deem worthy pass through it. Whereas Armor of Agathis is going to have a I like the somatic components of donning like a robe of frost. And for your vocal components of Armor of Agathis, something like, I call upon the powers of the cold abyss. Protect me from harm, and reach out and freeze my enemies. For Arms of Hadar, which has vocal and somatic components, something like... I like the idea of just ripping open your chest, and these arms coming out of your chest as your somatic components. All the little tendrils like... With the vocal components of Hadar, Dark Lord, come to my aid and vanquish my enemy. For Astral Projection, it's an hour long, so I am not going to do an hour-long projection chant. But it's a lot of laying out your focuses and getting little things prepped for your body. Maybe you're using the silver bar as like a bar of ivory soap. Just friction, 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 until you're entirely coated in silver. You're like Silverman. You're the silver. You are the Silver Surfer. That is the component. You're making yourself look like the Silver Surfer. For Augury, for a somatic component, you're using whatever divination instrument you have. So whether that be divination sticks, whether that be dice or bones, that's your somatic component. For your vocal component, maybe something like ADM. Is this a good idea? But no, I would actually be praying to whatever god of fate or whatever god of your cleric is. That would be your somatic components for that. Just a simple prayer asking for guidance. For Aura of Life, you only have a vocal component. I would invoke your god very quickly with something like Serenray. Keep me and my allies bathed in sunlight so that we may resist the darkness. And for Aura of Purity, for the vocal components for that one, another spell such as Pelor. Keep us invigorated and healthy. Let us go through this life at the top of our perfection so that we may serve you to the best of our ability. Something like that. But yeah. That is it. We have no more spells to talk about. We have nothing else to do besides a little bit of end credits. I have to give a huge shout out to the mother podcast of this show, Dear Dungeon. Me and Audrey, we will take your advice on tabletop games and we will give you answers. So write to us, check us out, give us a listen. It's more educational and it's a little bit less educational. We have some good ideas. Less focus on the deep dives, though, and just general advice. And we have a lot of fun doing so. You're sure to laugh at least once during the show. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can do so at The Lost Samurai 7. I will have a link down below. And for this week's recommendation, because every week I shout out or rec something that my friends are doing. And for this week, I want to give a shout out to my friend Kayla, who is doing Get Grimm podcast. It is a fantastic look at folklore and fable, and it looks into some of the origins of the stories and where they might have come from. And it also includes now tellings of those stories. It's really, really good, and you should give her a listen. She puts a lot of work into researching these stories and making them presentable. But yeah, class is dismissed for the week, and I'll see you on the next one.